to avoid any disturbance due to background noise. Please unmute only when requested to speak or when you want to raise a query during the question answer session. If you have a query, please raise your hand or send a message in the chat box. This session will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube channel of the Study Circle. I would like to share a brief introduction about the Delhi Study Circle of Insolvency Professionals. It is a platform for knowledge sharing, developing best practices, and supporting the professional practice inter se. The study circle was established in August 2017, and since then, it has been regularly organizing workshops, seminars, and discussions. The study circle is also managing a group on Telegram. This is the platform for members to interact on issues facing them and to share and enhance their knowledge. The topic for today's discussion is challenges of unsold and not readily realizable assets of the companies under liquidation and mode of recovery of assets available. And we have the privilege of having Shri Anil Kohli ji with us to share his rich and varied experience in the field of resolution of NP accounts ever since the enactment of SARFAESI Act 2003 and now under IBC. He is a qualified chartered accountant and an advocate apart from being an insolvency professional. He has 27 years of rich experience in banking and financial domain in his professional journey and has handled many a high-profile case such as Kingfisher, Shakti Bhog, Putin's, Mahua Media, etc. He is a liquidator in the matter of Moser Beer India Limited, SR Foils and Tissues Limited, and others. Under IBC, he has handled as well as handling 11 cases under IBC, out of which 4 matters have been resolved or under resolution. 2 resolution plans completely executed. We are highly obliged to him for having spared his valuable time and to share his experience and knowledge with us. Welcome, sir. We also have with us Sri S.P. Singh Chawla, a corporate lawyer and a qualified company secretary having rich experience, corporate law litigation, inter alia corporate restructuring, IBC matters and restoration, along with advisory on corporate law matters and transactional matters. He has also been a member of Corporate Law Committee of Northern India Regional Council of Institute of Company Secretaries of India and a vibrant speaker on various professional events. Welcome, sir. As a token of our gratitude and keeping in mind the urgent need to protect and preserve our environment, we had adopted a practice to plant 2 trees on behalf of the invited speakers. Balprada, an NGO working for environment, is our green partner for planting the trees. Now, I would like to request and invite co-convener of the study circle, Shri Alok Kaushik ji, for displaying the tree certificate and for his brief introductory address.
Thank you, Madhur, and good evening to all the participants. I'll just take a minute to share with you these three certificates that we present to our esteemed speakers for sparing their time and sharing their vast knowledge with all the participants today. So, unlike the conventional mementos being presented, so here we present these three certificates in collaboration with the green partner Balprada. So what Balprada is doing, Balprada is broadly speaking in the task of greening the society. So these are the certificates. Thank you, Shri Anil Kohli ji, for joining us today. This is the certificate being presented to Shri Anil Kohli ji. This is the certificate being presented to Shri SPS Singh Chawla ji. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Just a small glimpse of what Balprada is doing. So you can see the work which Balprada has done. So a lot of greenery has been created. Balprada plants shade-giving trees, and for today's speakers also, Balprada promises to, as a guardian for these trees, on behalf of these two speakers, to nurture these trees for the society. So, thank you once again, both these speakers, and I hand back to Madhur for taking over the proceedings further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the introductory remarks. There will be a question answer session after the presentation by both the speakers. So I request the participants to please post their questions, if any, in the chat box. Accordingly, the same will be taken by the moderator. Now, I request Anil sir to start the experience sharing session.
Yeah, good afternoon, friends. I'm Anil Kohli and one of your colleague, you may say, in this profession. So today, Saurabh, you can start the presentation.
I would request Alok sir to please kindly stop screen sharing.
So today's topic basically is very extremely, I can say it's an interesting topic for all of us, since you know the assets which are sold, it's okay, are sold, we are getting the asset liquidated, which is our prime duty, and also getting our remuneration or fees over that. The issue remains is with the assets which are not readily realizable and which may take a lot of time in getting realized or getting resolved for that matter. So earlier the scenario was different. I think one of the mic is still not mute, so you may just see if you can mute all the mics. So that earlier the situation was different. We didn't have any such provision. So I'll just
भीम गोयल जी अपना माइक जरा बंद कर लीजिएगा.
Yes. So I will just go through the provisions fast because I have not been given much time. So I have been asked to complete in another 45 minutes. So we'll just run through the process, what was being undertaken earlier and what is the situation now. So as per section 35, the assets were taken into custody and control by the liquidator, and he was to sell the assets subject to section 52, that is relinquishment by the creditors. So this was the situation. This was simply the situation that the assets were normally the assets were sold by the liquidator as per regulation 32, wherein the modes provided were they can sell it on standalone basis, on slump sale, or set of assets collectively, or assets in parcels, or the CD as a going concern, or the business of the CD as a going concern. So basically, there was no provision as far as assignment is concerned, or regarding the assets which are not that easily saleable in the market. That the issue is the difference is, one is when we have a reserve price, we have a fixed value to some asset, and then okay, fine, we fix the reserve price. The person can just go and see the asset and put a value on that and offer his price. But issue comes is when there is no, you are not able to fix a value to that. So we'll later on come in discuss on what is those kinds of assets. So basically now next slide. यार ये म्यूट कर दो एक बार.
कोहली जी एक मिनट रुके. रंजन चक्रवर्ती जी सॉरी, प्लीज अपने आप को म्यूट करें. रंजन चक्रवर्ती जी प्लीज म्यूट करें अपने आप को.
I think the host can mute, host can mute
वगैरह सब साफ किया करो.
So the host can mute all the participants.
Madhur, can you mute all the participants?
Sir, I am not the host.
बाल बहुत. हाँ, बाल तो मेरे को झाड़ू तो आज तो आपकी केबिन का पूरा.
Yeah, I think now it's okay. Fine. So are you able to listen to me? Yeah, I think yeah, fine. So now it's the mode of sale. So the liquidator should ordinarily sell the assets in through auction. That was the route adopted. Only exception was that private sale was allowed subject to certain conditions, which is only if it is perishable or could deteriorate in value, or the asset is sold at a price which was higher than the reserve price of a failed auction. So, but and or if the permission of adjudicating authority was obtained, if these were not, the conditions were not met, you could have obtained the permission of adjudicating authority. So, and the asset could not be sold to so and so, so and so. That all is irrelevant. Aage chalo. So now what happens is, it was okay, fine, that was a position, but the basic principle of IBC, the major important objective or what we want to achieve from it is a time-bound resolution of the stress of the corporate debtor. Like in liquidation, we are now given only 1 year time, and also simultaneously maximizing the value of the assets of the CD so that maximum recovery is ensured to the creditors. So this could be done okay for the assets which were readily realizable or saleable in the market, but few assets which were not readily realizable. So need was felt that something should be done, so that otherwise it would have been a very long drawn process, and the objective of a time-bound process could not have been met. Like in earlier liquidations, those continue for 20-30 years. So we have put in certain definitions or some categorization of what all we feel are not readily realizable asset, in my opinion. So like litigations, legal rights or recovery rights. So one of that is avoidance transactions. So I'm just going by examples. In one of my matter, SBJ Exports, we have filed an application, and we have already sold all other assets. So the liquidation is pending only because of this avoidance transaction. So this avoidance transaction could fetch an amount of maybe 33 crores. So that is a writing off of debtors. So somebody may find value in it. So what we can do is in such a, so you can show this application, that is just for your reference, that there is an application about avoidance. So just to show you in the prayers, so what is the application or these kinds of things. So this is one of the matter. So like their debtor had written off assets of 33 crores, and these were declared as fraudulent transactions by the transaction auditor. So this we have prayed to the authority to declare them as defrauding, the transactions defrauding. So what could be the outcome is, the outcome can be these transactions could be avoided, or in case of fraudulent 66, the amount could be recovered from those in default or from the directors or officers responsible. They could be made to make the loss good, or the recovery can be made from the debtors if they are reinstated in the books. So basically, the person whom we will assign, what he can do is he can have all these rights. He can pursue the application. He can pursue the application till the end and get the orders. And once the orders are there, we assign him rights that out of this outcome of the application, whatever fruit will arise, he will be entitled to that. He will be entitled to, recover from the debtors. He will be, I'll show you another example also. Like one is of undervalued transaction. In one of my matter, which is not in liquidation as yet, but we have identified a transaction wherein the corporate debtor had sold within a period 1 year prior to the ICD, insolvency commencement, an asset of 35 crores value of land at a price of 6 crores. So the book value was 9 crores, but land was sold as 6 crores. So that's why our suspicion just arose that how is it possible that the land is sold below the written down value, below the book value in the books. So we just got it valued from an independent valuer, and we came to know that, yeah, oh, this thing, this is an undervalued transaction to a huge extent. So we, Saurabh, the screen is not being shared. So this transaction, we filed an application for undervalued, for avoidance of transaction. So if this transaction is avoided by the adjudicating authority, there will be a land of valued 35 crores available to the person, to the assignee. So the assignee can, we can assign him rights for enjoying the fruit of the application of the prayer to adjudicating authority till the end, wherever it goes, maybe up to Supreme Court. So in return, he can get. So when we offer it for sale, say for assignment under Regulation 37A, so the assignee can get the right that whenever it is available, he would be able to deal with the land. So this is the book value 9 crore 84 lakhs and 33 crores fair value, which we got valued during insolvency, CIRP, and liquidation value we have taken 30 crores, and sale was at 6 crores 50 lakhs, and it was within 1 year. So basically, this is clearly an undervalued transaction. So some of the person can definitely find value in it. He can enjoy the fruit of getting a land with him, and he can when we put it for exemption or this assignment, he can offer a value which he may find suitable. Maybe he can discount the time period which may be lost in litigation or so. Maybe it goes up to Supreme Court or what. So he can accordingly discount it, but still we will be able to get a very nice value addition. That and also simultaneously we can close the liquidation process in a time-bound manner and giving fruits to the creditors also, which is a basic motive. So then there can be other litigations, there may be certain disputes regarding, say, some leasehold properties. We'll come to that also. I'll show you with example that I have certain litigations. There may be 10 lots of litigations, like arbitrations are going on, like maybe we have some matter against the department, tax department, or against some other person for recovery. Maybe 138 is there. Maybe whatever kind of litigations we can assign those litigation rights to the assignee who offers us. Oh, it's very bad. How come people unmute? So basically, this is one that is litigation rights. This is the major part. Major asset, which we can call it not readily realizable, is assignment of litigation rights. So which always the value is uncertain, outcome is uncertain, but somebody who does the due diligence, he can definitely find value in it and offer it accordingly. So which can be win-win situation for both the stakeholders of the process as well as the assignee. He can also get in some good value out of it. So then is unrealized debtors, receivables. We can definitely assign such debtors. We do all our efforts and still the debtors are remaining, or some sundry deposits, or some investments in some shares of the companies, the private limited companies or subsidiaries. So these kinds of assets, whichever are lying there, we can put it for assignment, and the person who takes up the assignment, he can realize it as per his own mechanism. He'll have all the possible rights, which he comes into the shoes of the liquidator and have all the rights which could have been exercised by the liquidator so far as those assets or the proceedings were concerned. So like loans, advances, security deposits standing in the books, then contingent assets, even that, this thing, trademarks or these patents, these kinds of things which we are not easily able to sell. Then contingent assets like some arbitrations, or some award has been done, or some claims under settlements or decree which have not been executed till now. So these kinds of things are there. So in view of these difficulties, the government thought of coming out with something to overcome the issue of number one, these not readily realizable asset, and to get the liquidation proceedings closed, and to simultaneously not lose value, get as much possible value as may be put on that date to those assets. So there was a discussion paper on corporate liquidation process by IBBI on 26th August 2020, on which this amendment was discussed, that what amendment could be brought in. So here, such assets are in the kitty are detrimental to attainment of objective. All these things. Aage chalo. Yeah. So they say fine, time-bound manner and everything is there. So basically, liquidator is required to take action to recover the amount from disputed receivables, disputed assets, pending claims, warranties, and all those things were thought of. And so it should be, they thought, yeah, that we should find value in all this. Aage chalo. Yeah. So then the discussion came to the point that there must be a provision for assignment of not readily realizable assets. So this was discussed in that discussion paper. So to benefit the stakeholders, particularly creditors, when the liquidation estate is insufficient to pay, the liquidator can provided with the right to assign certain statutory rights of action, such as avoidance transactions. This is specifically they have given. Contingent claims, litigation rights, etc. So that means it's an inclusive definition, not an exclusive. So we can take in all lot of things which we may feel are not readily realizable. So these can be assigned to third parties subject to certain safeguards. Looking at the best interest of the estate as a whole, the liquidator may go forward to assign these assets to realize some value out of them and expedite to complete the process within prescribed timelines under the code to the best possible. Aage. So there may be, they thought of that there can be two kinds of assignment. One is absolute assignment, wherein the liquidator assigns all the rights and interests in those assets. And second is assignment with recompense facility. I don't think this will be possible because, herein the assigner, the liquidator will give a right, get a right that if a value is received beyond certain fixed value, which can be fixed at the time of assignment, he will get a share in that. So this will again keep the liquidation process open. So this recompense facility is not that practicable in our process. So they say the liquidator has to be cautious in terms of assignment agreement and needs to take adequate safety measures. And for all these things, the liquidator has to provide for distribution, etc. everything. So principles to be followed by the liquidator as per the discussion paper: acting in the best interest of liquidation estate, seeking maximum consideration for the assignment, consulting the SCC, assignment through an auction, or if an auction is not possible, on an arm's length basis. Assignment shall be subject to section 29A of the code. So basically, best interest, definitely we have to take care. Then maximum consideration, how we can get is call for public announcement, and public, it should be by way of a public offer. Entire, all the general public in general world at large should be called in for a offering for that assignment. The document, process document should be put, all the information should be clearly put in on the public domain so that a person can do proper due diligence. Then stakeholders consultation committee needs to be consulted, and that is by way of a vote of 66%. Definitely that is required. Then assignment through, before, this is before assignment. Yeah, assignment through auction, it should be through public announcement or auction, whatever. So the auction means you can call for offers, and then also you can have an internal, negotiations with the offering proposers and before the SCC also. So, and 29A has to be complied in here also. So liquidator should to be reasonable, fair, and should act in get good faith. Then came this regulation 37A, which gives the provision how to go ahead. So they say that the liquidator may assign or transfer a not readily realizable asset through a transparent process in consultation with the stakeholders consultation committee in accordance with regulation 31A for a consideration to any person who is eligible to submit a resolution plan for insolvency resolution of the corporate debtor. Explanation says, for the purposes of the sub-regulation, not readily realizable asset means any asset included in the liquidation estate which could not be sold through available options and includes contingent or disputed assets and assets underlying proceedings for preferential, undervalued, extortionate, credit, and fraudulent transactions referred to in 43 to 51 and 66. See, here they are saying that it should be, asset should be included in the liquidation estate. So basically, if some of the assets like debtors, definitely we include trademarks, patent. Besides that, they are saying besides liquidation estate, there can be contingent or disputed assets, or the assets lying in underlying proceedings for avoidance transactions. So basically, they have themselves included specifically the contingent, disputed, and avoidance transactions besides the assets which are in liquidation state. So that can be mostly all the assets can be covered in this, because the assets which are there, tangible assets or intangible in the balance sheet, we definitely take it in the liquidation state. And besides that, there may be some disputed asset or contingent asset, or that is some litigation right or avoidance transactions. So all these can be covered for assignment. So the process which we can follow is that this is when for the new liquidations, wherein SEC is the provision is there under regulation 31A. So they say, first of all, you have to take approval for assignment in the SEC meeting. Then publication of EOI should be done. Process information document we have devised ourselves also. These have to be devised by you own. Process information document should be put on the portal of the CD or the IP or the IPE, whatever, so that the general public can get the information and they can do their due diligence. Then eligibility under section 29A of the investors or the proposer should be done. Then EMD or offers may be taken. They may submit their offers and they should be asked that, okay, whatever you offer, because no price can be given to the disputed or contingent assets. So there may be, but should not be any price fixed by the liquidator, because it's there also given that, whatever best price you can get. So it's not necessary that you have got the valuation done or you fix some reserve price to these things. You can straight away call for offers and can ask, that to submit some, to show their bona fide, they can submit a EMD also along with their offer. So then invite the investors in the SEC meeting for negotiations, because EMD is there, then only negotiation could go to some fruitful, end. So, and then assignment terms may be agreed with the proposer who offers the highest value. Then assignment letter or assignment agreement may be signed, and after receipt of full consideration amount. These all may be depend, because there is no fixed process given. So you may in the consultation with SEC, the terms can be fixed, even for the payment terms or the assignment terms, or what all is being assigned, how it will go up, who will meet the litigation cost, and how to file an application in the court, and substituting the assignee in place of the liquidator for that particular litigation or whatever. So these all can be done in the SEC. Then earlier old matters, where there was no SEC. So like in most of my matters I am doing, there is no SEC provision was not there. They are old liquidations going on. So there what we do is we take an approval from the SEC for assignment, then go to NCLT and take the approval of NCLT for assignment, because this amendment has been effective since November 2020. So before that, if some liquidation has been commenced or SEC has not been formed therein, so we can take the permission of NCLT to cover to allow us. So I'll show those examples also. Then the process is same. Yeah, same. Then is contingent claims, assets like claims under arbitration. So we have for this we have an example of Dehradun Highways, though the matter is not under liquidation, but there is another matters like Energo or IBRSL. So in all those EPC companies, there are a lot of arbitrations. So wherein you have arbitration against some good bodies like some NHAI or some Coal India or PSU also, wherein the chances of recovery are quite high. And the assignee, if he's an established corporation or some established person, they can definitely look in for some value in that, kind of recoverables through litigation, whatsoever arbitration awards, and that runs into thousands of crores. Like in Dehradun highways, there is an arbitration with NHAI. They had completed the 4-laning of Haridwar Dehradun highway to some extent, and they have filed a claim of 2,200 crores, which is under arbitration. So maybe some person whom we offer it, he may find good value in this, and maybe he offers 500 crores, 300 crores, 400, whatsoever. So that depends, and after giving, discounting all the time involved and the possibilities and all the permutation combinations will be done. So this may definitely fetch a good value for the stakeholders. Then certain assets may be in dispute. They have some value, like in my matter, this is major matter which I would like to discuss, like Mozarbear India. It's a very unique example. Just day before yesterday, I have published the offer, EOI, calling for EOIs.
The questions would be very, very important to get session live. One question answered.
चिराग शाह जी
The answer
kindly unmute कीजिए अपने आप को. Mr. Chirag Shah, kindly mute.
Yeah. So in Mozarbear, what has happened is I had an asset of liquidation value around 400-500 crores, which we were able to sell within a period of 6 months, despite there being huge, labor workman problems and all. We were able to deliver the possession of the this thing. That was also some kind of, we may call this kind of, we had to follow the process. We had to apply a lot of mind. So the things were ultimately, favorably done, and entire amount has been distributed. Even workmen, we got a huge, litigations with workmen in NCLT and CLAT, high courts, and also Supreme Court matters are still pending. But to the extent we got the orders, we have distributed accordingly. So still the matter is with Supreme Court of India. So that may bring in some different picture. So what happened is, here there was a land parcel which was 381,000 square meters. So out of which 270,000 was directly with MBIL, which we have already sold. 110,000 was converted into an SEZ, Special Economic Zone. So that 111,000, what has happened, out of this 111,000 SEZ is owned by MBIL itself. But some of the portion, say 20,000 meters, has been given to their subsidiary Mozarbear Solar on a sublease basis, wherein Greater Noida Authority has also signed, and that sublease agreement, that property has been charged. Next page. There has been charged to certain creditors also, and they have availed, that company has availed, facilities, Mozarbear Solar, from the lenders and against the charge of that property. And a second MOU was done, that second, beyond that one only, the earlier, yeah. So the second tranche of land of 26,000 meters was given on MOU, which itself has no significance. Okay, sublease has to some extent, but MOU, because any leased property from Greater Noida Authority cannot be, cannot be given to any other person without permission of Greater Noida Authority. So there is no permission for this MOU. So Helios is another company, 19,000 has been given on a sublease and charged to lenders. Also, the buildings have been built by MBIL, our company Mozarbear India, and those buildings, infrastructure, utilities, even the generators and the the pipelines which are going, the network, everything of vacuum compressors, all belongs to MBIL, and they have given it on lease. So there is a term in the lease deed with these companies, and 67,000 has been leased, and 50,000 is still common areas which is with the MBIL, but it is a common area in that SEZ itself. So accordingly, what was thought is, so in case they sell these properties, this MBSL, which is in liquidation itself, and in case they go for selling it, definitely that MOU or this sublease agreement could not fetch that price, and also the common land which is there, which belongs to MBL, cannot be, you know, have any utilization, that cannot be sold separately. So best is to, you know, sell it all together. 1,11,000 square meters should be sold all together to one party by MBAL. So the mechanism we have adopted is that there was a clause in the sublease to terminate the lease if the lease amount is not paid. So lease rentals, like I am showing here, 39 lakhs or something with against so and so security. So what happened is there is dues of this lease money of more than 55 crores in one case, 33 crores for other. So all these things were there. There were huge dues to MBAL. So there is no way that, so there was a clause that 6 months termination notice can be given to by MBAL and to terminate those lease. So what I did is I have given that notice, though the liquidator has not handed over the property. I have gone to NCLT for directing the liquidator to hand over that property since the lease has been already terminated. And and you know, Helios Photovoltaic, yeah. Here also it's not in NCLT. It's not CRP has not commenced. It's with the owners itself. There also we have terminated. So now we have asked the NCLT. So as a liquidator, since I am eligible to take custody, but this person, these owners are creating issues. So I have filed an application for directions to the owners of Helios to, because section 19, you know, is applicable in this case also. If any person, you need some cooperation, they have to cooperate with you. So they have to give you that custody of that asset so that you can sell it. So against liquidator also, I have already have a matter, a liquidator of MBSL. So now these litigations are pending, that with the disposal of the application against MBSL, I am going to get the custody from the liquidator of MBSL for that 50,000 or 46,000 square meters, and for 20,000 meters with the disposal of that application under 19, we can get the custody from the owners of that company. So this may, you know, now this may result in, you know, the liquidator myself or Moser Beer India Limited having the entire land parcel of 1,11,000 meters, which is itself as an SEZ. So it will be of a huge value with buildings and this thing. So that will come devolve upon me, but the litigations may take a lot of time. So, but I have offered now this the entire rights in this property for assignment to some investor. So they may continue with the litigation, and they may, you know, fight out the litigation and get this, you know, property, get the rights in the property and get the property transferred. For that, I am even giving them special power attorney, and in case they are this litigation, they are successful in that, they may register it the property in any other person's name or get it transferred. So that special power attorney has been devised. So this way, you know, there can be a huge value. The property otherwise would not have fetched at all. You know, even the liquidator of MBSL, it was difficult for him to sell. Even that common areas would have gone waste, and you know, all these things. So what I did is now I have offered the rights in this for assignment. So now I'll show you the minutes. How did we, you know, go to the financial creditors and took their approval for this assignment? So just come to that, you know, portion. So from the financial creditors, we gave all the picture to them. Even the liquidator of that MBSL was called there. Since the lenders are mostly common, so all this is there. So herein we discussed it. They were apprised of JLM and so all these things. The meeting was also attended by liquidator of MBSL, and management of Helios also attended it. And you know, we discussed with them certain options. At that time, assignment, this thing was not there, but later on it has come. So we took finally the approval. Wo dikhana order wala. So then we went to, you know, Saurabh, you can come to the order.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ye aa gaya. 37A. Okay, I'll just show it. Finally, jo aaya hai. Yes. In the end, however, above proposal doesn't work out. Earlier proposal didn't work out. So this assignment has been inserted. Now, aage aao. Yeah. Niche, yes. So liquidator explained all these things that this can be assigned. Post lengthy discussions and deliberation, it was decided that an attempt be made under regulation 37A for sale of not related by assigning the rights who is eligible for to submit a plan. So this way, liquidator, the stakeholders consultation committee also approved it. So then we went to what we did is, since it was under old regulations, so we filed an application with NCLT. So वो दिखाना जरा NCLT का prayer. So we filed an application with NCLT. ये म्यूट कर लो जरा एक बार, विशाल म्यूट के लिए बोला यार. या सी
मेघा जी आप अपना वो म्यूट करिए माइक, मेघा जी.
So here we have asked for permission under regulation 37A from the adjudicating authority that to allow us for this assignment as approved by stakeholder. The order dikha do. So NCLT has given a very nice order. You will see amended. Okay, chalo pehle ye dikhate hain. So they say that liquidator has asked for all this. So accordingly, since there is 37A, so in this order there was a niche aao last mein, yeah, liquidator is permitted to assign or transfer an NRRA through transparent process in consultation with SCC in accordance with regulation 31A on consideration to any person who is eligible to submit. This was the order. So the liquidator is permitted to assign the these assets. So this is the order, just recent order, 5th May itself. So, but there was a mistake. They had given earlier, assets which have been already sold. The table was wrongly put. So we got it amended just recently. So now see plot number 66B, 1,11,000. They are particularly mentioned and corrected. Aage aao, niche. Also, we have sought permission and have been granted permission for selling the investment in shares and other securities, equity preference, debentures, bonds of subsidiary companies, Moser Bear Entertainment, SCZ, Moser Bear Investments, Moser Bear Distribution, then investment in shares and securities of private limited companies also. Then sale assignment of loans as per balance sheet. So, so that can be given to several companies, both group and outside group. So the whatever loans and advances have been given. So current assets, including receivables, debtors, deposits, advances, attached bank accounts, all those as per balance sheet. Then these trademarks are there. Moser Bear label itself. Aage aao, Moser Bear photovoltaic, There is a one scratch guard also. That's a good label. So all these things they have allowed, and accordingly we have already published the advertisement for sale of the assignment of these assets. So this is the EOI which has been published. So just to show you the one draft notice for assignment of assets, so and so assignment under offers are invited for. So no reserve price has been fixed, nothing has been done. Aage aao. So it's only that interested parties may submit their offers to the undersigned latest by 10th June. Assignment will be subject to the provisions and regulation and the process document. So the document has been published on our website, which may be shown. Yeah, this is the process information document. It is a very detailed document which we have prepared, giving the information, about each and every process, how step by step. So we'll just have a glance, there's not much time. So we'll have a glance. Aage chalo, yes. So it's for this purpose and to contact the liquidator. Yeah. So disclaimers, aage, yeah, aage, yes. Neither we are responsible nor we can, all those things, assignment. So, we have to take all the precautions that there should not be anything. We should keep all the possible, things in our hand that we can cancel it. We do not, what we are assigning, we have to explain. We have the right to reject, and how the process will go on, how they will give offer, and there will be negotiations. And the best party, there can be auction also. They can be asked to bid against each other. So assignment agreement, the draft of that, and even the the SPA which we will give, and what all rights they will get, what all limitations are there, how it may land into. We are clarifying each and everything so that there should not be 29A we have put. So all these things, so that aage thoda fast chalo, yeah. So that there is no issue, later on, that there should not be any litigations for us. So all these documents have been asked for, like in auction we do. So physical verification, site visit, we have already told them that it is not reserves the right. So there maybe they may it may be possible or not. Chalo. Yeah. So due diligence you have to do. So it is on as is, where is, as is, what is, whatever there is, and without recourse. And these things are there. So you have to yourself caveat emptor and all that. We have asked them 10% EMD with direct direct transfer to the bank account, and the process also later on kya rahega, yeah, shall be returned within reasonable time. So declaration kaise hoga, LOI will be given. So all these things, then default hoga, so then we can forfeit the entire money. And these things, fraudulent corrupt practices agar koi karta hai, so all that provisions are there. So this is a cost in who will bear the taxes, all the dues against the property, and everything is your this thing, governing law and all those things, common things. So this is the map what we are offering. So 66 has already been sold, 66 is being offered. So sub Ds is also, we have given the details of all the documents. We have given the details of the clauses which we have, notices which we have issued, the status of the litigations in detail. So whatever has happened, so more details can be sought. So these are the shares and all those things. So we have given the details of each and every shares of the company. So all this is there. The trademarks, the details of whatever information, whatever we have put for sale. These are the formats, affidavits, undertakings, 29A, all those things. Okay. So this way. So this is one, Moser Bear India Limited. Another company, because I have to run fast, I think Madhusudan ji, mujhe lag raha hai, yeah, we have only 7 minutes left with me. So this SR Foils and Tissue Limited. So there is a major, asset is a factory, land and building. So what has happened is we put it for sale. However, while the auction was on, RICO has cancelled the allotment. So for their dues. So they say that it is leasehold property. So they have cancelled the, allotment itself. So that asset as such, we can say, is not available with me and now, since the allotment is cancelled. But and the RICO has first charge. That is also as per law. They have the first charge over the property for their dues. But we filed an application. They were about to take possession during the liquidation process itself. But we filed an application with NCLT, who has stayed the possession by RICO. However, it is pending for litigation with NCLT. So in the meantime, when we see that there is an issue here, that this may or next screen. So there may be issue since there is a litigation going on. We may or may not be able to, get it within our time period allowed, or maybe it may take a very long time. So the RICO can go up to Supreme Court also. So we went to SCC, have taken their their approval for assignment of the rights of litigation and for getting the fruit out of that. So these are the minutes of SCC, wherein what we have done is, so we have got all possible kind of approvals from them, because what has happened, even during the process, we got certain offers. There were certain other people who were coming. So we first of all presented their offers, like 15 crores have been offered by one, and 7.5 crore by one, 14 crores by some, and 8.31 crores by another. So all this was happening. So we have another person came in who said, no, I want to also to offer now. So we asked the committee, since for maximization of value, so there should not be any binding, that it's not a purely an auction process. It's not a purely auction proceeding. Herein only the offers are being invited. So we SCC allowed that even if some other person, here it is written, with the view to objective of maximization of asset, if any other prospective bidders approaches, he may be entertained by the undersigned for submission of EOI, so that the process, because it is not strictly a tender process. So, so for maximization of value, we have been allowed that also. So the discussions are still going on. COVID pandemic has occurred in between. So, we are still similarly, PID process information document has been drawn, EOI was given, published, all these things were given, done. So herein, because SCC already has been formed, so we did not require to go to NCLT. So this is under a new regulations. So accordingly, this is the EOI. So accordingly, we are hopeful to get in both these processes a handsome recovery for the, stakeholders, in which they are also happy, and also time boundly will be able to complete the process. So both the objectives are being met. So this way, friends, we can, go in for assignment of not readily realizable assets, which is quite interesting segment, and the persons who can understand, the significance and the utilization, they definitely would be benefited a lot out of it. So otherwise, I'll be there or available for any kind of queries to clarify that. So what I would like is the other party, my friend can continue, so that we can have time for question answers, because I am seeing there are hundreds of questions that are coming in. So this is a new process. Definitely there will be a lot of questions. So thank you, friends. Thank you, Madhusudan ji. Thank you. So kindly you may take up the other person.
Anilji, you will have another 30 minutes for the question and answer session, so don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm respecting the time as you had assigned me. So Chawla Saab, Sat Sri Akal.
Madhur?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Anil, sir. Now I would like to invite SP Singh, sir, for his deliberations. Sir.
I'm thankful, sir. First of all, Kohli sir, what you have given a platform where one would have to start with, but you have covered very, very good points. And apart from not only the legal aspects, you have covered it so fully. So I would say on behalf of the audience, and I was also one of the audience who was listening it. I'm sure it has been a very good benefiting session for the audience. From where you have left, sir, I would take up. So since my topic, I would, before I start with my presentation, I would give a preface. It is important for us that since the assets are so important for the corporate debtor, and the whole and sole primary duty is being given to the insolvency professional, either during the CIRP or the liquidator, when you are in the liquidation process. One must always keep in mind that even in liquidation, the recovery of assets basically means recovery of your monies. So if you would read Regulation 39, and I would actually like to go word by word to that regulation, because it is so interesting that one must also keep in mind as an insolvency professional what it says. It says recovery of monies due. So the heading of the regulation is this. So I am reading Regulation 39 of liquidation process regulations. So it says the liquidator shall endeavor to recover and realize all assets and dues to the corporate debtor in a time-bound manner for maximization of value for the stakeholder. So as Kohli Sahab had said it, that the two key objectives, which are the twin objectives in the CIRP, is time-bound resolution and maximization of value of assets. Both these things have been very well captured in the liquidation processes. Now it is very important that the lawmaker, while enacting and while making this law, have given the heading called recoveries of monies due. But when the provision starts, it says that the realization and recovering of all assets. So one, we would have to understand that the assets are ultimately your money. So if you are able to realize your monies, it would add on to your asset base in the company. That's one simple thumb rule thing that we must important keep in our mind during the process. Either it is CIRP or it is a liquidation process. Now I go on to a very important thing which police have otherwise have dealt it. But since I also have personally dealt with all those processes, one important thing is avoidance application. It is something which is keeping all the liquidators and the resolution professional on toes. I am sure the people who have actually done this matter, wherein avoidance application have been filed by the resolution professionals, and then the High Court also given judgment over this. So it is important that one must always keep in mind what stand you are taking in respect to your avoidance application. There may be tomorrow. Ultimately, there is no doubt the final decision maker on these all commercial points is COC. But as a liquidator or ultimately as a RP, we must always keep in our mind that the avoidance application has to be dealt very carefully. Then the income tax refund also, why I am taking all these points at the preface, because all these points otherwise have been discussed by Kohli sir. But these would make sure that whatever recovery mechanisms that I discussed, all those are theoretical mechanisms. We can practically see how and what to choose. But we must also know when all those mechanisms would come into place. So that is why income tax refund always has been a very difficult thing where one cannot know when the refund would come. So therefore, one would always keep in mind as a professional, as a resolution professional, that all my refunds, if they are coming, I have to deal with them with the COC. If they come to the asset base, it is ultimately becoming a part of the corporate debtors. So either RA takes it or it goes into liquidation. Then the SCC would decide. But income tax reform as a litigation process, we should always be careful in dealing all with those litigation matters. Now I would be going ahead with my presentation and then I would be discussing in all those points. Is this visible on the screen?
Yes, yes, it is visible.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Vishal. So as we discussed with the mechanism regarding the recovery of debts, it is important that we must understand the legal system, the Indian legal system. So the ecosystem by which all the recovery methods are being done with today is the most effective as of now, I would say, has been till now, it has been a very clear-cut case wherein either a recovery suit can be filed under CPC or a commercial suit. So we would understand how commercial suits are filed and how they are different. So that's important. We must understand while going ahead with what kind of legal mechanisms are there with us. We must also understand the nitty-gritties of those. Then the arbitration which has been there, but arbitration proceedings can only work when there is a clause or an agreement. But I would show and we would discuss how even during the CIRP, the arbitration can still take place. Then apart from these two, the criminal action are important these days. Seeing if the RP decides that yes, there has been certain fraud which the other party is playing around during the CIRP or in the liquidation process, the RP is under the authority, under the court, he has power to go ahead and file a criminal case. Then is filing of criminal complaint, either if there has been any 138 which he feels that he wants to file, there has been a check which has been bounced. This all, the rest of the 2 points, 138 civil proceedings, these, I take a presumption that the company is going into, and the process, whether it would take place, it is going as a going concern. This presumption for rest of the 2 points is I'm taking this. Because if the company is already shut, then not much of the legal proceedings would take place. The mechanisms would not come into place because the company would already be closed. And there would not be any as such business going around. So this is only when the business is taking place. Now, before we start, whether we go into commercial suits or any other kind of legal mechanisms for recovery, we must keep in mind that against whom either a company or a firm against whom we are going, what is the financial status of that company. So if we are able to take out or bring out that whether it's a company, and if we can see on the MCA that what is the financial position, how much profit they have earned, or what has been the turnover, this would basically tell you how financially healthy that company is. Then most important, and which I believe one must always keep in mind, and limitation period has always been the top of the town thing, which has always been in the mind. And even as judges, which they look out, the first point which they look out is limitation. We must see if whether the limitation, whether we are within the limitation period of 3 years, or if there is any other limitation period. For example, if you're going for execution of any decree, you had a decree. So I'm taking a presumption that a corporate debtor had, before initiating of CIRP, had got us a decree, a civil decree from a court. But however, they have not executed that decree. And now during the CIRP, the resolution professional, while going through all the papers and while perusing, verifying all the things, he have realized, oh, I have a recoverable debt which I can go ahead. So here we would have to see that the limitation period for executing the decree or an arbitral award, it is one and the same thing here, is 20 years. And this would ultimately would, again, if the recovery gets in your hand, it would again be a recovery of your assets of the corporate debtor. Then is which competent court, which jurisdiction has power. Whether if the amount is more than 1 crore, we can, yes, but obviously can go for IBC, though it is not a recovery proceedings. But one, there has been the maximum utilization, which the resolution professional, which I have dealt with, has been moved with IBC. Earlier, when the limit was more, was little lesser, now since due to the suspension and the pandemic, I don't think so IBC, the recovery proceedings, or we call it the resolution proceedings, would go ahead in filing all those cases, because if the recovery is less than 1 crore, we would have to see, I would discuss all those mechanisms as in. And one more, very more important point is court fees. That in case of commercial suits, yes, the amount would depend on the recovery. So how much is your value would depend on. But as far as I would share practical examples which I have dealt with as to how there are mechanisms which are very cost effective. And then the last here is the service of summons. We would have to see whether we are able to. So before we go ahead and file a case, we should always do, before filing any case, a recovery, a demand notice can be sent from the offices of the resolution professional to see whether it reaches to the party or not. Does not happen that you go ahead with filing a case, you put court fees in case, and then you ultimately get to know that the summons could not have been served. So that again becomes a very ambiguous situation where one is not even able to service the summons or court notice. Now I discuss about the various mechanisms. The first various mechanism out of all, which as of now has been quite effective as far as the civil debts or the mechanisms which are required are done. So Lok Adalat has been very effective. It does not bear much of the cost. So here the only thing is that if your amount of debt for which you are going for recovery, if it is less than 10 lakh in value, then only you can go ahead under Lok Adalat. Here the situation, there have been many times in Delhi, I primarily, if I talk about, every 3 to 6 months, there have been lok adalats which have been taking place. And one of the myths that we generally have it, which I would rather like to clarify here, that it is not that if you have filed a civil case, then you cannot go for lok adalat. The CPC gives you power and to the courts that they can refer it to the lok adalats if required. Then the second mechanism, that is as of now, which includes majorly the ADRs, the alternate dispute resolutions, which majorly includes your arbitration, which has ultimately your mediations. I would talk about how ADRs work. Then is SARFAESI. SARFAESI is primarily for the banks. But why I have written it here and why I would like to discuss, since as of today, the recovery mechanism which is given or which ultimately resolution professionals are going is for the companies. Section 160 and 175 of the code, which though I have not been notified, but they are very, very, I would say, minute sections which requires dealing with it. The adjudicating authority for those sections which are for individuals and partnership firms is not NCLT. So this is ultimately very important, that the resolution professionals would be going out from NCLT as an adjudicating authority. So the adjudicating authority for the individuals and partnership firms has been decided as DRT. So when you will be going, I would discuss with one slide how DRT works. And since the RP would be given the responsibility to be the bankruptcy trustee, it would be interesting how things takes place. During course, there could be a situation that within 6 to 8 months, those sections can be notified, subject to the pandemic which is going on. If it gets better, then IBC, which I'm sure are very well versed with this. So I would not be talking much on the IBC part. I would be going ahead with the civil laws. So as we have discussed here, that the recovery suits, ultimately even there are two limits which we have to discuss and decide. One is the territorial discussion that one would have to see, that if the jurisdiction of the defendant or the cause of action, if it takes place, is at to which place, and according to that, the filing of that plaint or suit would be decided. Then the other one is the pecuniary jurisdiction. Pecuniary depends on the kind of limit that you have it. If there is a, let's say, a value which has to be recovered is less than 20 lakhs, and that has been decided, there is a mechanism by which you can see that below 20 lakhs would be with the civil court, more than 20 lakh would be with these district courts, and more than 1 crore is with the high court. So one would have to see where you have to go. Why I am telling this? Because as a resolution professional, we should be first able to understand and decide on our own, as in what can be the best proposition. This post to that, yes, you can discuss that with your legal advisors, with your counsels, as to what can be the best mechanism. But for understanding, it is important that to maximize the value of the assets, which is the onus and the responsibility duties on the resolution professional, we could see and we could understand. Then I go on the arbitration. Arbitration would only work into place. So there are two phases. One, if let's say in a corporate debtor, the company had executed many agreements, but the recovery of those debts have not been done. The agreements have been signed. There is an arbitration clause inside it. But during CIRP, the resolution professional feels that yes, the outstandings are many and I must reach to all those parties. One is you can do, yes, personal persuasion can be there. You can send demand notices from your offices, from your counsels. But if there is a arbitration clause in the agreement, which you have, which is already executed between the corporate debtor and the party, then arbitration would come into place. The other situation is, let's say during the CIRP, there is a situation that you reach to a party which, though it has been, the proposition has been very less explored, but yes, if the situation comes to a level that where you are able to persuade and convince the party, which is ultimately the corporate debtor's debtor, and if you are able to persuade them and they are ready to give you money, and you enter into a settlement with them, what would be the situation? Let's say, since the CIRP is a time-bound process, the company would either be resolved and the RA would take place, or the company would go into liquidation. Then at that point of time, it is important for the resolution professional that if they are entering into a settlement agreement, they should have an arbitration clause. Ultimately, there could be a situation that resolution applicant may take over. But at least as a professional, when you were going through the process and you enter into agreement, you have given a arbitration clause for resolving any dispute during that time. If I talk about the liquidation process, yes, the liquidator does not otherwise have power to initiate any legal proceedings until unless you go to adjudicating authority and seek permission from them. The second most important point here is conciliation, which I believe, going through the processes and the experience that is there, conciliation can be a very effective process. More importantly, if the corporate debtor is a MSME, and I would discuss how MSME mechanism works, how Samadhan, if the corporate debtor is a MSME, how it can fetch them a good amount of recovery. So now I would be talking about the commercial codes. Commercial codes majorly have been made in a way that it would only cover the commercial disputes between the parties. So I must first discuss about the commercial thing, about the commercial meaning and the commercial disputes which are there. So ultimately, any dispute which talks about two entities wherein there has been a certain business, there has been trading, there has been supplying of certain goods, and those all agreements, those all disputes would be covered under the Commercial Codes Act. However, we must, at the upfront, we cannot file a suit. So we would have to first go under the process. So Section 12A provides pre-institution mediation in all the commercial disputes which are there. I would show what kind of pre-institution mediation happens, what is the basic form that one has to file, because it is important that once we are going ahead and understanding how commercial courts work, this process of initiating the pre-institution mediation can be done by the offices of resolution professional itself. So I would take you to the form. So this is the form. This basic form has to be filed with the competent court where you think that the jurisdiction of the state court is there. So here you have to give details of your dispute. You have to give the quantum of claim is the amount that you have to give, the territorial jurisdiction as per you, and the territorial jurisdiction would depend on the cause of action from which you are arising. Then a brief synopsis of the commercial dispute. So here your brief synopsis would come as to what is the nature of the total transaction that has happened between the corporate debtor and the party. Then here it would also be that you would have to sign it, you have to pay 1,000 fees. So this is 1,000 fees is the only court fees that you would have to give as far as the pre-mediation is concerned. But post, in case if this pre-mediation fails, then the court, commercial suit would be filed in the court and the mediation cell would give you a non-starter report here. As far as now to understand, as in what kind of commercial disputes and how we can vary with the disputes, all and any kind of corporate agreements, if there has been any kind of, let's say, a commercial transaction between one party and the corporate debtor, wherein the amount has been left and the resolution professional feels that yes, the recovery of that amount is due and it is pending, then in that case, one should always first see the mechanism which is there. If there is a clear-cut commercial suit and the amount which you are seeking is an admitted debt, well, that is something which must be checked at the upfront. So if the amount of debt that you are seeking and the commercial transaction that you are going ahead is an admitted debt, one should always prefer commercial court and commercial suit. There may be that the court fees could be higher, but the effectiveness, because since you cannot go for IBC as the amount is, if it is lesser than 1 crore, the effectiveness has been more. I have personally have dealt with these procedures wherein we have seen that even at the time of pre-mediation, the parties have come ahead and settled the matter. Going ahead, just this has been otherwise a new, I would say, arena in the market, which it can be utilized seeing the current pandemic situation where one cannot go physically to courts. The courts are practically are only taking urgent matters. This can be very effective. That the mechanism where you can go ahead with this, where you can actually resolve your disputes through online modes. So these ODRs are a much more effective procedures that we are going, which would be a way forward, which would be a futuristic approach for the resolution professionals as well. I would discuss how it all starts. So if you have a dispute and the resolution professional feels that yes, there is a debt which is pending, they can file a application with the ODR organization. So there are different kinds of platforms which have been made. I have given names. There are SAMA, there are Center for Online Dispute Resolution, Zagami, Resolve 360 is there, and many more apart from that. So what we can do is we can file an application with them, and a pre-mediation session would take place where they would tell you that this would be their cost. So it is not a fixed cost, but yes, if you compare that with the commercial suits and the recovery suits, yes, they are much cost effective. Then both the parties would be called to amicably discuss the issue, and here the corporate debtor would be represented by the resolution professional. So this is one arena where either the resolution professional or their counsels can be a part to this mediation proceeding. In case if the parties, either of the parties, since you have filed as if the other party decides not to opt in, yes, your case still is on, you can still go and litigate the other party. But in case if the mediation happens, then you are ultimately, without going to court, you are going to get a settlement and ultimately a asset base in the corporate debtor. Here it would also be all these professionals who are the ODRs which have been handled. They have a certain policies and terms to which we would have to understand. They would not be taking any physical meeting. So it would all be online mechanism that they would adhere to. So what should we have as prerequisites? We should be aware of this kind of mechanism is available. And you can opt any, there are, I would say, India also has budding, I would say, all these platforms. Apart from India, if there is any decree or if there is any debt which is due from an foreign party, one can even go in. London has a very good and very strong platforms for ODR. Then ultimately they have a platform which would provide you not only the mechanism for recovery, they would also get into the settlement process. So in case if there is an agreement which has to be settled, they would also help you down in the drafting of those agreements. ultimately taking everything from A to Z, they would help you out in settling the whole recovery. Apart from this,
Sorry to interrupt, Savalaji.
Hanji.
Keeping in mind the time, I would request
Yes,
you
sir.
to wrap up in another 5 minutes. Then we
I
have
would.
time for
5 to
question
10
answer.
minutes, sir. 5 to 10 minutes, I would wrap it up.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So why I'm saying ODR is so important for us, that in case if we are able to, if there is a corporate debtor which has a small base, or let's say which has a very limited base of assets, this ODR process would help you out in cost effective manner. You will be able to at least realize the assets and the recovery of those debts, which by filing commercial suits or by filing arbitrations, which would cost you higher amount of money. Then going ahead is the MSME. In case this, I take it that if the corporate debtor is a MSME, so the government has given a platform where if the corporate debtor is an MSME, they can utilize the portal called Samadhan. Now I would discuss here how it works. So I am, rather than going on the basic prerequisites, I would presume here that since it's an MSME, they would be making all the compliances as far as the MSME Act is concerned. They would be having a UAM. So the procedure is that you have to log in into the Samadhan portal. So now here I would show, and this picture otherwise is from the government website as well, which is a verified thing. Here what you have to do is you log in into Samadhan portal, you file your complaint within 15 days. Generally this 15 days otherwise has not been adhering due to the pandemic, but otherwise it's a cost effective and an actual process which has been taking place. I have been doing many matters in Ludhiana, in Chandigarh. Delhi has been a little slow, but the council, what they do is they send you intimation to both the parties against whom the case has been filed. Here the council first would take you into the conciliation process. If the conciliation fails, the council would decide whether this matter has to go into arbitration. So when they are writing that council can approve the entrepreneur application and convert into case, this conversion is into the arbitration. So then the arbitration would take place in the MSME council itself. And believe me, here there would not be any court fees. So what you are doing is you are utilizing the conciliation department process as well as the arbitration process in such this cost effective manner. The council, once they hear the parties, they would either reject or would admit the application. So let's say if the application is admitted, the arbitral award would be taken as a decree. Now I go to a situation where during the CARP you get decree, this arbitral award, but somehow the company could not surpass either any resolution plan or could not have any RA. I take a situation and the company goes into liquidation. Then the situation would be that in that situation, if you want to go ahead and get the arbitral award executed, yes, you would have to go and seek permission from the adjudicating authority at that point of time when you are a liquidator. Commercially, this otherwise has been a very cost effective, very well versed manner. I can give example, if there is party which is situated in Ludhiana, they take up cases even today online. That is something which is not many councils today are doing this, but MSME as a council is very, very robust system. They have it. And you cannot even, ultimately, you cannot, if somebody wants to challenge the arbitral decree, they would have to pay 75% or 100% of the decretal amount. So you cannot escape from the decree if the MSME council gives it. Now I talk about DRT here, and within I would rather wrap it up due to paucity of time. Why I'm talking about DRT here is because if section 160 and all the processes which talks about individual and partnership forms comes into place, if the insolvency, those sections comes into place, then the resolution professional who would be interested as bankruptcy trustee would have to go to a DRT. So the power and out of the whole power that the DRT has, and if I compare it with NCLT, the distinguishing factor is that NCLT does not have a review power with them on their order. However, DRT has its review power. So all these powers we must understand before, or because this is the time where we can utilize. The courts are taking such limited matters, and we can utilize this pandemic time where we can read about all those sections which might come in future, and then you'd be interested with all the powers and the duty. It is important that we must be able to understand DRT, how it works. Last, we would also understand how we can improve the propositions. So we can file suits. Yes, there have been private organizations that I talk about, which helps you out, not even filing. They are more of a mediocre middle party organizations, which helps you in realization of your assets and debts. There have been recovery camps which many private organizations does, apart from the local adalat, which is local adalat otherwise is being done by the government. Priority and concession here, since the phase of the corporate debtor would be resolution professional, we must be lenient, and as a resolution professional, we can personally persuade the suppliers or those parties which have given any work to us and there is a debt due, that we can ask for some upfront amount so that at least there could be infusion of an instant amount. Here I end my presentation, and I ask Vishalji or Madhurji to take it further for the question and answers.
Thank you very much, Nala sir. It is not my responsibility to ask all those who put up their questions. Some of them have already started with the question which came was evaluation. It was
Manishji, your voice is little slow. It is not coming properly.
Can you hear me properly now? Hello. Am I audible, sir?
No audible.
You are audible, please.
So first of the questions came from Ganeshji. He is asking, is it necessary to do the valuation? And one of the issues, and this question is to Mr. Anil Kohli, one of the issues facing is that during the CIRP process and even during the liquidation, the valuer doesn't value the contingent asset. What they do is they do valuation of the underlying asset and then put an astronomical figure. Suppose the litigation going on a land worth 100 crore. So they value the land rather than the what amount which could fetch or which is likely to be fetched by such a litigation. So what is the solution to those issues?
See, I had basically in the initial, the presentation itself clarified that these assets which we are offering for assignment under 11A, we don't need to put the any value which we can attain. So we whatever offer, best possible offer we receive, we can assign on that. There is no requirement to value these assets. There is no requirement to put up a reserve price. So it can straight away, just offers may be invited, put it before SCC on their approval after negotiations. Then there is no the requirement of any sort of reserve price or a particular value, minimum value. Nothing is required. So no valuation. There is no question of valuation.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. N.K. Sood, and he has narrated the entire incident. So what has happened that there were litigation going on and the cases were going on. Police has overtaken the symbolic possession in his case. And from past almost 28 months, he is not even getting the dates. So, and even the extent of the ARP process is expiring. So what is the best solution in such a scenario? When there are
This is the best solution. I have read that question. I have read that question. Similarly, in Mozarbeer, one of a container of goods is lying with police custody, and litigation is going on. Court has not allowed the release of the container till now. Some criminal cases going on. So what we have done is that also we are offering for assignment. So you can offer for assignment of the rights to that litigation and the outcome of that litigation. So he will be able to, step into the shoes of the liquidator and continue with the litigation, and whatever outcome comes, like whatever goods he will receive out of that litigation, he will have the rights over those goods. He can sell it and he can enjoy the goods. So this is the best case scenario. He can come out with this 37A assignment of this rights in that assets as litigation.
No, but Mr. Kohli, I am not able to value the assets because, the assets are still in the physical possession of the accused premises, and local police is not very much cooperative in getting me the valuation. So in 37, I require some valuation of the assets. And the thief, what he accused has done is he has painted the machines, he has removed the plates. So I even don't know what are the actual value of the machines in the balance sheet or this.
Sutsab, again, the question of valuation is coming. I'm telling you, you are assigning the rights to litigation. So this is a contingent asset. No need to assign any value to it. There is no need for valuation. You simply can ask for offers, and whatever best offer comes, you can assign out after the approval of SCC on the value offer received. So there is no question of valuation. Again and again, I am telling. That is the best point out in this. Otherwise, there would have been no utilization of this provision also.
No, in this case, the stakeholders committee is also not, because this is the old liquidation process. So the stakeholders committee formed. So in this case, what should I do? Whom should I consult?
So you have not gone through the presentation, Sutsa, carefully, because I told you that if that is an old matter, you can first go to stakeholder committee, take approval for assignment, go to adjudicating authority like I did in Mozarbeer, take their permission for assignment, and once you have the orders of adjudicating authority, then call for EOI, and once you receive the offers, go to the SCC and SCC or whatever you may call. Earlier it was otherwise also there was some stakeholder committee was there, not SCC as such. So so you can go to them and just have their approval to the best offer, and there can be negotiations you can yourself do, or it can be in the front of the stakeholders. So whatever the best course you would think appropriate.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay.
Welcome. Yes, Manishji.
One of the connected question which came regarding the valuation only, so people are asking how to fix the EMD, even if like or guarantee which they are supposed to take from the people who are making offer. So how to make benchmarking when you are inviting, because there is no value to be given. How to fix that? What should be the minimum price where the people can come and make offers?
See, again, same question. Reserve price need not be fixed. EMD, you can tell them, okay, whatever you are offering, let us have the EMD 10% for that amount. So at least you can see the seriousness. So you should you cannot fix any EMD as well, or you can yourself have in your mind that okay, fine, this property should be around 10 crores. You can ask for a lump sum 1 crore from them. Okay, 1 crore EMD should be accompanied, or 10 lakhs, or say 1 lakh. So you can fix any amount as the EMD. So no need for reserve price, and accordingly EMD you can fix as per your own, with the approval of SCCs, if it's done, would be better. So as per your own calculation, as per your own, knowledge or the, circumstances, you can fix the EMD.
One of the question is regarding the documentation. So Mr. Satya Prakash ji asking what kind of documentation.
Regarding?
Mr. Satya Prakash ji is asking, in case of loan, advances, receivable, what kind of document should we have?
मनोज जी आपके वॉइस थोड़ी ऑडिबल कम है, थोड़ा वॉइस पे ध्यान दीजिएगा एक बार.
हाँ, मैं वही थोड़ा पास आके सुन लिया. So in these cases of receivables and current assets, assignment agreement is the best course. Like bankers are also, assigning their debts based on assignment agreement to ARCs or other companies also, NBFCs. So assignment agreement is the best course. Stamp duty is definitely payable on that. So that has to be taken care of. So that has to be borne by the proposer. So all these things are there. So assignment agreement is the best course to assign the rights to for recovery or for dealing with that, or to enjoy the fruit of that.
There are multiple queries that what is the best mode. Like there are multiple modes which has been discussed so far. The people are curious to know. There are multiple people who are asking what is the best mode. Like if there are options, you say that you call them. Second, it's like distribution. And third, even for the realization, the people are curious to know even before you come to that stage where you can sell it off, how to recover the money first. So what should be the best mode of recovery?
So Chawla Sahab.
Sir, as per me, what Manish ji is fully very well versed with the mechanism. As per me, what I am seeing the situation, I believe ODR, online dispute resolution, could be a very effective procedure. Seeing the situation, seeing that the RPs are also struggling of not going out, of being ultimately put to one place, one cannot go out. So online dispute resolution is something we must now come to a level. I have also seen that the private organization, we must take help from them. So by sending private notices, demand notices, these personal persuasion also helps a lot. So ODR, I would say, is my one-line answer, Manish ji.
Mr. Chawla, can I add something here, please?
Please, Sumit ji, yes.
Sir, the thing is that I find that it seems to be a very exorbitant mechanism, and it is not much, I would say it is not very popular in India, and it has not been very much mature. It is still at its nascent stage. So what is your view? Practically, ODR things being done and results coming out. I seem to be a little apprehensive on the aspects of ODRs and arbitrations in India.
So, Miji, you are right. The stage where the ODR, how they are working in India, is at a very premature, at a very nascent stage. That is why I am saying that the resolution professionals and we as a professional should start seeing how the procedure works. Resolve 360 otherwise is a very good organization. I have worked on some few assignments with them. Sama is one where I have seen there are people who are known to me in South, particularly in Bangalore. They have a very good success ratio. That's what important is. For recovering your debts, you must have a very dedicated team. Why I say so? Because see, ultimately recovery of debt is ultimately on the head of the resolution professional. And if I can able to ultimately take out that, at least the tension and the worry of recovery to a private organization who are experts in dealing with it, I'm sure this would strengthen ultimately the workforce of the resolution professional, because then he would not be focusing or going around with the parties to recover. The resolution professional would be working more on the compliances, on the process part, and would leave the recovery to that private organization.
Mr. Chawla, I just wanted to know small thing from you. We were talking about the commercial courts.
कहाँ पे आपकी लोकेशन है? मैं मिली नहीं हूँ, मैं फटाफट बात कर रहा हूँ. तो मैंने बोला कि द्वारका, तो कहता है मैं मंडे को आके लेके जाऊँगा.
मनोज जी, can you please mute?
हाँ जी.
हाँ जी, Sumit ji, please.
Yeah, sir. Under the Commercial Courts Act, we have a partnership dispute, a dispute wherein we have a partnership agreement. That matter can be adjudicated before the Commercial Courts Act, right? Now, in one of my matters, there was a partnership agreement, and in a certain clause, there was an arbitration agreement written. So the matter shall go according to your understanding before the arbitration forum or before the commercial courts, and which has more efficacy.
No, I would say if any of the parties have invoked arbitration clause,
No,
yes,
no,
then you.
We have not yet invoked. We have just signed the agreement. Just signed the agreement.
Only signed, then commercial court would have the jurisdiction over it. I would say if you talk about the efficiency between the arbitration and commercial court, I would still say the arbitration have better results. They have yielded better results because you are not ultimately going to the court. You are outside the court, you have arbitration, either you have chamber arbitrations. The results and the success would be more. Seeing the situation, I'm saying it only with the kind of pandemic that is going around.
I understand. If the arbitration clause is there in the agreement, then also we go to the commercial court.
Sumit, there are lots of people who are raising the hand. So
sure.
Ask the question later on.
No worries.
I invite Mr. Rajkamal Rajkamalji to ask the next question.
Thank you, Manish.
I would like to have the kind answer of Mr. Anil Kohli regarding the right to recompense the optional in case of assignment. Normally, it's very difficult to get the right to recompense because it will be necessarily dragging of the liquidation process. But in a situation where there is only one financial creditor and who is grossly underpaid in the liquidation, if they in the SEC meeting they opt for right to recompense with the assignee. So I think that in that case that will be a practical solution, so that initially they get the money, and on the successful sale by the assignee, they also have the fruits of the so they can get the right of the recompense in the liquidation process. If that be feasible, I would like to have your reaction based on your experiences.
Yes, definitely. This is a good, option that we assign, the liquidator assigns for once, and later on the recompense thing, can go to the financial creditor or maybe other financial creditors in proportion to that may be, agreed to in the SEC. And this is a good solution. This can be done definitely. This can be done, and that recompense facility, so that the financial creditors get that benefit later on. So that can be mentioned in the assignment agreement, and the terms can be settled like that. Definitely.
If
the liquidator will be free out of all this, and he can close his proceeding.
If there are multiple creditors, it will be difficult. But if there is a one or two creditor and they are underpaid, so they can have that benefit. That's why I want your attention. That's all. Thank you.
Not even for multiple creditors, they can be distributed in proportion that can be agreed in proportion to their claims or whatever. That I see in one of our matter, we have asked Axis Bank, like the financial creditor, to take up the assignment from us, and there are other stakeholders also. So it is being decided that okay, Axis Bank will continue with the avoidance transaction, and whatever will come outcome of that litigation will be distributed after deduction of expenses by Axis Bank amongst all other stakeholders, all other creditors also. So that can be done.
Yeah, normally if that is a consultation between the banks, then it's practically possible. Otherwise, if they do not match in their thinking, then it will be difficult. That is what my view was.
Yeah, that can be worked out. Yeah, things can be, but this is a good option. Yeah, things can be worked out.
Yeah.
Chaya Gupta, please ask.
Yes, sir. Very, very good evening to all of you. My question is to Mr. Anil, sir. Sir, there is a case. I have been appointed as a liquidator of a company in which there are no liquidation value. Secondly, they have specified, or the ROC has specified in the third COC meeting, that the liquidation cost will be rupees 1 lakh only, inclusive of everything. So how to claim in the SEC meeting that will be upheld soon? how to claim for the fees and the other expenses, because 1 lakh won't be sufficient. This is my first query. Second query, sir, is that can a liquidator file one more IA for confirmation of the PUFE transactions based on the transaction audit, although the hearing and pending is pending in July based on the third COC meeting. The fourth COC meeting, it was already prayed by the COC and the RP that to put the liquidation order on hold till the hearing is in July. So how shall I work for it? I am really not able to get it, sir. Kindly enlighten me on that, sir.
See, this is
Anil, sir.
See, Chaya, these questions are little out of this context for this today's forum, but still,
Okay.
you know, and I'm not that clearly able to understand. So what we can do is, if I can give you my email ID, so if you can
Kindly,
email
sir.
me, I will
Sure,
you
I'll
know,
be doing
clarify,
it.
huh? That would be better.
Okay.
You can note down, it is insolvency@arck.in.
Okay, fine. I'll be doing it, sir. Insolvency at the rate. Yeah, I'll be doing it. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, sure. I'll be doing it.
arck.in. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Vinod ji, please ask your question.
Namaskar, Anil ji.
Yeah, namaskar,
Anil ji,
Vinod.
I have two questions. One is, whether I have to take a prior permission of the adjudicating authority when my offer price is higher than the failed auction price? Whether I need to take a prior permission? I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah.
My question is whether I need to take a prior permission of the NCLT when my offer price, someone is offering me something which is much more than the failed auction price. In that such scenario, whether I need to take a prior permission or whether I can go without taking the prior permission of these adjudicating authority. And my second question is whether those unpaid call money are transferable as NRRA or not.
So first question, Vinodji. First question, I would like to answer that. See, in my Moserware also, we had taken permission. What happens is, if the asset is perishable and it can deteriorate in value, and it is offer is more than this thing, more than those. If these three conditions met, then no permission is required. But if the asset is not perishable, it's not, value will not deteriorate, then you have to take permission, even if the offer price is more than the published reserve price. Moserware, the principal bench has cleared also in their order. Yes, we have rightly approached them because these three conditions need to be met for selling it without their permission. So if the above three conditions are met, perishable, deteriorating value, and more than reserve price, then only you can sell it. But in other cases,
all three conditions are to be meet out cumulatively.
Yeah. This is what we interpreted it like, not independently. This is how we interpreted, and it was upheld by NCLT also, principal bench. It's there mentioned in the order, that regulation 37D or something, that you have rightly interpreted, that yes, these three conditions should be met.
Okay. My second question is regarding unpaid call monies. Whether those are transferable as a NRRA or not.
See, unpaid call money, इसमें shares का तो कुछ रहता ही नहीं है, विनोद जी, कि call money तो कौन ही देगा, मतलब उसमें क्या मिलेगा, I don't understand. So how will
Yes, Anil ji.
Actually, आपकी आवाज बहुत कट रही है, but basically, what I understand is call money unpaid means that we have to receive certain amount on the shares of the company. But basically, shares का तो nothing is left, you know. So I don't think the unpaid call money will have some value even if we say yes, you can assign it, So assignment may, I don't think there is any issue in that. You can definitely assign anything not readily realizable. So there also should not be an issue. But call money, practically speaking, what we can get.
Thank you, Nilji.
Kohli, myself, Vijender Sharma, sir, may I raise a question, please?
Yes, please.
Yes,
there are two type of NRRAs. One NRRA is basically a preferential undervalue transaction application pending before the Honorable NCLT. Okay, it is rightly required because the application was submitted by the applicant as a liquidator. Now we need to replace it. You need a permission to change the applicant. But in case when there is no such things are there, is it required to have the permission of educated authority, or if it is required to have the permission of stakeholder? Because as per the regulation, it is the empowered is given to the liquidator with the permission of the stakeholder in a transparent and bona fide manner. Then where do we the permission of Honorable NCLT required for this purpose?
See, this amendment has been, has been introduced in November 2020. So when, wherever there is a stakeholders consultation committee, which is in the liquidation cases where liquidation order has been received under the new regulations, but in our case or some of the cases, the liquidation orders were received in the earlier regulations where there was no provision for stakeholders consultation committee. So if there was no consultation committee itself, so whose approval will we take? So therefore, we go to an adjudicating authority, see our, like in Moser where I have shown you the order, that our matter falls under so and so regulations, and we do not have a consultation committee. So kindly allow us. So they have, allowed it us accordingly. So we have gone only for the purpose of our, safeguard.
No, my question is law. It is not about any particular fact or particular case. My question is very simple. Because as per the regulation amendment, it is empowered to the liquidator to assign the NRRA with the permission of the stakeholder. In case you do not have the stakeholder committee, yes, you can very well develop a stakeholder committee because it's not mandatory as per the law. But to have a good governance and a best practices, you can very well within your power to have a stakeholder committee also. And nobody will prohibit you for this. Okay. My question is, when an NRRA is there and liquidator is here, it is defined that it has to be with the consultations committee of the, the stakeholder committee. Where is the permission of educated authority required?
There is no requirement, sir. What I am saying is, for our own sake, we have just gone there for additional safeguard. If you don't go, it's not an issue, because in the older, if the liquidation is old, more than a year's old, say, then there was no stakeholder, there was no provision for stakeholder consultation committee. Yes, we formed a stakeholders committee for our own benefit, but it was not designated as stakeholders consultation committee. It was just a stakeholder committee for we used to form it for our own purpose. So that's why we go there. They said that, sir, there is no stakeholder consultation committee per se, because our case is older regulation. Therefore, for our safeguard, even if you don't go there, don't take the permission, it's not an issue. I don't think there will be an issue. Only thing is, for our own safeguard, we go there and take permission.
Now, my question to Chawla ji.
Vijendraji, there are lots of questions and we are running short of time.
Just one question, please.
Just
because it's a connected question, please.
Then you can ask. So all the participants, there are multiple questions and we will not have enough time to answer all of them. So all the answers will be posted on our LinkedIn page. And this is the last question from Vijendraji Kohli ji. Please go ahead.
Yeah, please tell me.
Vijendraji, please.
Chawla Saab, you see, as mentioned by Kohli Saab, and it is coming out that it is not required to take the permission of educated authority. When I move to the civil court or any other forum, they want, you are not the CD, you are not the liquidator. You are simply having a minutes of a stakeholder committee or a letter of assignment or agreement by the liquidator, what type of problems such assignee may face to recovery in front of any court?
The problem, let's see, the mechanism is altogether different. When you are approaching for any matter relating to insolvency and then you are approaching adjudicating that is all fine. The situation is, and we must keep in mind, there has been I would say a very recent judgment wherein NCLT jurisdiction has been designed, sir. So we would have to see if you are practically going for any filing of any civil suit or any kind of legal matter, you would have to get the permission from NCLT. There is no other mechanism which is there. If you are going for a legal right, yes, if you are instituting a case on behalf of the corporate debtor, you would have to go and seek permission. Which in other cases is not there, which Kohli sahab have already described.
Thank you very much, Chawla sahab or Kohli ji. Now I ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now, I would like to invite Advocate IP Mr. Vinod Chaurasia for a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Madhu. Good evening, everyone. I am Vinod Chaurasia, here to present vote of thanks for today's webinar. I would like to thank our learned guest, Mr. Anil Kohli ji and SP Chawla ji, for joining us and enlightening us with their precious knowledge. Today's webinar was full of knowledge and interesting facts and things that gave us a deep insight into the topic and revealed us some very important and relevant aspects about the liquidation process. The points which were discussed by Mr. Kohli, how to deal with the NRRA, and the points discussed by the Mr. Chawla about various recovery methods which are available to the resolution professional or the liquidators. Both the presentations are very impressive. I'm pretty sure these precious knowledge of both the liquidator, both the speaker will help us tremendously in our present and future assignment. I once again thank you, Mr. Kohli and Mr. Chawla, for taking out the time from their busy schedule and enlightening us with the knowledge. Thank you both of you, sir. Lastly but not the least, I would like to thank Mr. Manish Paliwal for effectively moderating the session, and I would also like to thank Mr. Madhusudhan Sharma ji, our learned convener, for advising us, enlightening us to have this present seminar and guiding us in selecting and choosing the speakers for the today's webinar. Lastly, I would like to thank Mr. Madhur Agarwal for anchoring the session so nicely, and our convener team consists of Mr. Saravgi ji, Alok ji, Vishal ji, for working hard for making this webinar effective. And over to now Mr. Madhur for closing remarks.
Now, we will conclude this program by giving a salute to our country.